All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask the Expert with the Martin Eiden team. I am very, very excited today because number one, the weather is super great outside. Number two, all of our guests here have an amazing Zoom background. They've obviously had practice in Zoom. And number three, the month of May is buyer's month, right? The market is on fire. How do we help buyers? What's going on? Because we don't want to tell buyers unless they really, want to take it easy, like, call us in 18 months when the market slowed down because they may miss everything by then. So I'm very excited today. We have Alex Mahgoub in New York. We have Whit Prouty in LA, two of our, stellar salespeople, director of sales in each region of the team, going to tell us, inside tips and tricks on how buyers can get properties. And then following this month, we're going to talk to a real estate attorney, Gary Katz, and we're also going to talk to Michael Stein of Wells Fargo. This is your key three people here in New York. You need a mortgage broker, attorney, and real estate broker. In California, you just need Whit and a real estate, you just need
Whit. We don't tend to use attorneys here in California.
Yeah, all you need is a mortgage broker and Whit. So first and foremost, Alex, one of the things, what's great about this is both Whit and Alex are on the other side of the transaction very often. They also list properties. So they can give you kind of some inside track on what listing brokers are looking for and what kind of body language, what to say, what not to say. So first of all, Alex, welcome again. Why don't you give us a little bit of opening thoughts on just this incredible turnaround of the New York market and what's happening right now?
Yeah, terrific. Thanks, Martin. Excited to be here. Excited to give everyone that's listening some info and advice. And what we're seeing in the marketplace is just a very, very active market. And the question is like, why? Why is the market so active? I don't know if you guys know this, but we had a pandemic last year. That is still really going on. And, I know a lot of people are suffering, but here in New York City, between vaccinations and reopening, people are coming back to the city. I usually joke around with people that last year I could not give homes away. September, October, November was probably the slowest time of year. People were very scared, very nervous about what was going to happen with the election, what was going to happen with pandemic. At this time, we did not have any vaccinations. I would tell people, this is a great investment. And they would look at me like I was crazy, like I was trying to sell them, snake oil or something. But right when,
which is a good investment, by the way.
Depending on, what you need. But, once vaccines started to be released around mid-November, I started seeing people starting just to get a little bit more hopeful. And then literally once the vaccine rollout came out full steam and we had the start of a new presidency, it really changed people's mindset. People felt really excited about the future, very hopeful about the future. They could see that maybe the worst of pandemic is behind us now. So literally every week, every month since January 20th, the market has ticked up. And, Martin always likes to talk about the figurative cocktail party, where people are sharing stories about looking at apartments and getting into contract. And this is legitimately happening right now because I'm having the same friend circles reach out to me because I'm putting friends of mine into contract and they're like, oh, I heard so-and-so's in contract. I want to start looking, and it creates this momentum snowball effect. So what I'm telling every buyer now is the sooner you buy, the better, because the market is really taking off.
That's awesome. And Whit, now LA has been on a tear for a long time. LA did not have the New York slowdown. Give us a little snapshot of how is it? Has it been the same? Is it more intense now, less intense? What's going on?
Absolutely. And you're right. So Los Angeles did not have the slowdown that New York started seeing. I think you started seeing your slowdown around 2017, if I'm correct. LA actually, 2000. Since 2011, LA has been on the upswing, and we did have a little bit of a slowdown end of 2019-ish kind of a deal.
Okay.
But we really didn't decline. We just
Interesting.
kind of like started to catch our breath a little bit. And then I will say 2020 began. COVID hit us. And just like pretty much the rest of the world, we did take a break from a couple of months. Really, there weren't new transactions that took place in March and April, which didn't affect the numbers for March because we still had closings from January and February that were closing in March. But we didn't have new properties going into, we call it escrow, you call it under contract,
Right.
in the end of March and April. So we had a couple of months where we did pretty much stop real estate transactions. And then lo and behold, the end of May, June came, LA blew up, just
Wow.
like a lot of the rest of the country. As far as single family homes are concerned, we did have a market segment that did take a break at that point, or was still on break at that point, and that was our luxury high-rise condominium. High touch.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it makes sense because
Mhm.
COVID was in full swing, and people at that point were scared about going into a high-touch property using elevators and other common areas. So our tip at property did go on hold. Interesting thing, case in point, I had a listing at that point that was in the Wilshire corridor, high-end luxury building. We got no buyers for this place, and it was beautiful, priced very well, and we had nobody to show it. Took it off the market, came back on in January of this year, 2021. Guess what? Now the condo market, because we've had such pressure on the single family home market for the duration of 2020, after everybody started entering the market again, now the condo market's hot. Property sold, multiple offers in January. So now even the condo market is hot in Los Angeles as well.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thanks, Whit. So yeah, so look, guys, I mean, all this news sounds great if you're a seller, but for a buyer, it may sound a little disheartening. So maybe kind of like, let's start with basics. You know, Alex, what does the buyer just show up and look at properties, or what kind of homework do you suggest that they have to do? Because you know, candidly, preparation wins the game in the competitive market. So what does a buyer have to do to get ready to look at property?
Yeah, great question. Such an important question, especially in an active market where you have a lot of competition. You have buyers that have maybe been looking for 2-3 months. They've lost out on things. They have everything ready to go. So when I'm talking to a first-time home buyer, what I always tell them is, it's great that you're talking to me. I'm going to be very important in this transaction. But even more importantly is that you talk to a mortgage banker or mortgage broker. It's very important that you understand what you're able to buy. People always think that they can afford XYZ. It's usually 200K below that or 200K above that. Okay.
Right. That's true.
It's so true, you know, and why start looking out there if you're not even sure what a bank will lend to you? And it's very important to have all of that taken care of. And the process takes, you know, at least a few days and maybe even up to a week or two. So if you find the property of your dreams, you don't want to be scrambling to get a pre-approval letter to show that, you know, your financial wherewithal that you can purchase the property. So that's job number one, is getting the pre-approval. And then I always tell people that you want to get your team together. And as you noted, getting a real estate attorney ready to go. Again, when you find the property of your dreams, you don't want to be interviewing real estate lawyers and see who's going to give you a good deal, who's going to take good care of you, who seems to understand the market and what's necessary. So talk to me for sure, but then also talk to a mortgage banker and have a real estate attorney ready to go. And then
Got
beyond
it.
that, I think it's always great to put together a little bio or profile. I think it's always nice to put a face to an offer. Again, in a multiple competitive bidding situation, if you have all your stuff together and there's a nice little note about who you are and why you love the home, it could be the difference maker in getting a winning bid.
That's a very good point. So, and what I'm just going to go to you in a second. So the three things really are have a mortgage pre-approval letter, not pre-qualified, which we'll go into that in another week or so. Number two, have your attorney lined up with it. And then with New York, you also want to have your a financial profile. We call it an asset liability sheet. And then finally, what Alex said, which I think is great, is a letter of introduction, which is a paragraph or two, because you don't know who how the seller is going to make the decision, right? The seller, then if it's two people, usually one person is emotional, not to be sexist, but it's usually the guy, and then there's the analytical one. So the show me the money, and then the other person is, oh, I had a lot of great memories here. I want to make sure the home is going to someone that's going to like it as much as I do. So Whit, tell us a little bit about, again, kind of going to that mortgage pre-approval. I mean, are sellers even looking at offers if people don't show up with that letter?
No, absolutely not. And this is, hey, we're all on the same page here. We're all professionals, and that's the big should be takeaway for whoever's watching this. Yeah, tendency is that buyers have the first conversation with me, and one of the first things that we do discuss is, have they spoken with their either mortgage banker, lender, or whoever. And if they haven't, then that's going to be the first suggestion to them. Because the last thing they want to do too is go out and see property that may be priced a little bit too expensive for what they, can afford. And then they get tied to what that is. And then you start showing them what they can afford. And that's upsetting. Or if they start looking at property that actually is less than what they can afford. So again, that's really, really important. The other thing too that is a little bit different about both coasts is that while that letter of introduction used to be actually a big deal here, particularly in multiple offers, people used to make, we call it the buyer's love letter to the seller. Right? And usually too, it included, oh, let's throw some photographs of you, if they're a new buyer, whatever, show pictures of the baby, the dog, let's do all of that kind of stuff. Actually, because of what's happened this year with fair housing, we actually now have our Compass broker dissuading us from using those types of things, because at least here in California, we're looking at fair housing laws and policy and saying, you know what, anything other than financial information and terms could be used as discrimination. And so that's actually one thing that we're starting to see more and more in California, at least in Southern California as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So that kind of goes back to with your broker to help you with that. So a follow-up question, Whit, and again, we're all brokers here, so we're I guess we're going to be biased with the answer, right? But why would a buyer want to work with a broker as opposed to go out on their own and just, do a search on Zillow or StreetEasy and then show up at open houses? And what are the advantages of having, a broker with you? If you could just kind of touch base on that.
Sure. Well, when we first start working with a client, we have an agency agreement. And when we present that agency agreement, we establish our fiduciary relationship with that client. So first thing off the bat, the buyer then knows that as their agent, I'm on their side and I'm doing everything in their best interest versus if they show up their own, they don't know the person on the other side. And so we start to establish a relationship. They know then that they have somebody on their side working in their best interest. And that's the whole thing. I also, as a professional, then have referrals for them to use, such as if they need a lender, if they need inspectors, all the professionals then that they might need during a transaction. I have history with a bunch of different people then that we can help refer them to.
Okay, that makes sense. And now, Alex, you know, what, in your words, what does also a broker do now? A lot of buyers are under, you know, it's part of the real estate urban or real estate legends. I would say urban myth, but you know, real estate myth is that all these brokers know about the secret, you know, pocket listings, that if you work with a buyer's broker, they're going to show you all these secret listings. Is that what's happening in this market right now, or what does the buyer's broker really help out in something like this?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and such a funny question that comes up all the time, that people believe that there is this secret market of sales happening and it rivals the open free market. It is insane. That is not the case at all, okay? If I had an amazing asset, like a beautiful house or a beautiful apartment, wouldn't I want as many eyeballs to see it as possible? Wouldn't I want to show it to the whole brokerage community and every consumer out there and put it on every different, you know, media out there? Because I want as many buyers as possible. I want as many offers as possible. All right. The stuff that is off market is the stuff that has issues. The seller wants way too much money. There's no view. Maybe they're very private people and they don't want anyone to know they're trying to sell their place. You know, the deals do happen off market, but generally I do not think they are good deals for buyers. They tend to be great deals for sellers, but everyone loves saying they found something that no one else could find. So for people doing off market deals, good for you. But definitely in the free market, the open market, you're going to have a lot more possibilities, options, and be able to vie for it openly. You know, the stuff happening undercover, it's like, why is this happening undercover? You know, but to answer your bigger question, what does the buyer's broker do? We do everything. You know, I'm part life coach. You know, I'm a tour guide. I schedule appointments. I'm a resource. I'm putting you in touch with mortgage bankers and lawyers and inspectors and storage people and designers. We literally do this every day. I live and breathe real estate. I wake up thinking about real estate. I go to bed thinking about real estate. For people who are just wading into this for the first time, why not work with a professional? Why not work with someone that knows the ins and outs and can prevent problems from happening? I've been telling my buyers now that I'm essentially a project manager. My job is to make sure from A to Z, everything goes well, that there are no problems, no issues. And at the end of the transaction, you're smiling on your face because you know I did an amazing job.
That's great. That's really
And you
great.
always do.
If you read the client testimonials, it's true, you know.
Absolutely.
Right. So now so here's, kind of give us a little bit, Whit, if you don't mind, a little bit of a time frame, like from, and there's you know, the big caveat is from, you know, LA, from contract signing to closing is a matter of weeks, right? Generally speaking.
Correct. It's I would say shorter than New York.
Oh yeah, and then New York, it's essentially 3 months, any way you slice it. So it's a huge difference. But you know, can a buyer look at properties passively, or is it kind of a full time? You have to be all in aggressive. How many properties does a buyer need to see before they feel comfortable in their segment that they're looking at?
Sure. So it all depends on the individual as far as what they feel comfortable with. You know, you definitely have individuals who are very decisive people, know exactly what they want. They see it, they want it, they get it. boom, done. You also have people that are exploring things because they don't have the knowledge of the neighborhoods. They don't have, they've never owned something before, and it's a big decision for them. And this is where Alex's comment about being a life coach comes into full effect because, you know, we're not just selling an investment. This is their life, right? I mean, a home, it's so personal, and your lifestyle can really create what goes on for the rest of your life. So, you know, finding that right space for them is incredibly important. So I've had clients where I've literally taken out one time. We've seen 3 or 4 properties. They know, they saw the one property that they wanted. Boom. Next thing you know, we're writing an offer. I've had other clients, a year and a half it takes to find their place. But if that's what it takes to find their place, that's what it takes. We do try and focus them as much as possible because, you know, it can be quite overwhelming. LA is a very large area. We have a lot of different neighborhoods. They offer all different kinds of things, but trying to narrow it down into a neighborhood that they can afford, that offers then all of the aspects of what they want in their lifestyle. That's what we try to do. So
fair enough. So Alex, do you want to add anything to that? Because it's similar with New York with a bunch of different neighborhoods, or how many properties does somebody generally have to see, or what's your thought process?
Yeah, you know, I think Whit, you know, hit the nail on the head when he said it depends on the person. Everyone is different, you know, and you meet people at different stages in their life. So, you know, I was working with a buyer about 4 years ago. I think we looked at 10 or 15 properties, but he just wasn't ready. You know, it was a very nerve-wracking thing. About 2 months ago, he reached out to me. He said, Alex, I want to start looking. New York is back. I literally think we looked at one property. And bizarrely enough, like 4 years ago, he had seen the same apartment like 2 floors lower, and he just knew it was the right one, you know, and there was no way I could have predicted that. You know, I have another buyer that's been looking for almost a year, but the property that they loved in December, shockingly, is still available on the market, and we saw it on Monday, you know, so again, it's very specific to the person. And to your point, Martin, a lot of times people have an idea. Oh, I want to live in Brooklyn. Oh, have you ever been to Brooklyn? No. Do you have friends in Brooklyn? No. Then why do you want to move to Brooklyn? Oh, I hear it's hot, you know? I find that people sometimes have an idea, but that doesn't match the reality. So if they want to look at Brooklyn, let's go see a couple of things in Brooklyn. Let's vet that option. You know, let's get out there and put energy and feet on the ground, because the virtual search is different than the actual search. Things look good on paper, they don't look good in person. You think you'll love Brooklyn, then you walk around and it's not for you. You know, so it really is a process. And I just tell people, go on the journey, trust the process. I meet buyers and they have like 15 questions and like, well, you know, what's the sublease policy? And I'm like, hold on, you haven't even walked around the apartment. Do you like this place? You know, it's like they're so worried about all the technical stuff that they're not focused on the emotional stuff. Do they like the view? Is it big enough? You know, is it a nice building? That kind of stuff. And look, if this is the winner, we're going to get them every piece of data and information they need so they can make a good decision. But in those early stages, just go on the adventure. Do you like this? Do you hate it? And then that will kind of guide you. And to Whit's point, the search becomes much more focused and easier because you're not seeing everything that comes on the market in Kips Bay and, you know, Hell's Kitchen. You're hyper focused, only doorman luxury in Midtown West. Boom.
Got it.
Life becomes much simpler at that point.
Yeah, right. And it takes a while. It's kind of a big funnel, a big funnel coming in, right? So Whit, you know, we're again, these half hours go so freaking fast. What are maybe your top few tips you want to share with buyers that are out there now? What are your maybe like, you know, 3 to 5 things you wanna say to them?
Yeah, putting your financial package together first. Boom, get that done right away so that you can feel comfortable when it comes to that aspect of the offer. Also, it goes along with that. Getting your team together, your real estate agent, your financing, making sure too that if you don't already know who your inspectors are going to be, your insurance agent, all of that kind of stuff. If you front load that stuff, then when you're ready to pull the trigger, it makes your life so much easier and it makes the process much smoother. Also too, get out there and see property right away. Go with your agent. It's important to go with your agent to begin with, because then you can start having conversations about things. One of the other really important aspects about an agent is I walk into a property and I point out things to clients that they might not notice right away because I've sold so many homes. And so I'm also looking from the eye of, okay, this is my client. 5 or 6 years from now, when they go to sell this place, I'm the one that they're going to call. So I need to sell this place. And the last thing in the world that they want to hear are excuses on why this property is not selling, because then they're going to say, Whit, you sold this property to us. Why didn't you point these things out? Then these are issues.
Fair enough.
And so, boom, point those
That's
things
great.
out. And then next thing you know, they have a good property and it makes everybody's life easier when the buyer then becomes the seller.
Understood. Alex, what are your closing thoughts for buyers?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Exactly what Whit said. Get your team together, the finances together, all your forms and documents all together. And I recommend that you be patient. This is going to be an exhaustive process. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. You got to stay positive. It's very easy to get demoralized and down on yourself. And we're never going to find anything. It's never going to happen. That's not the case. Plenty of fish in the sea. There's always going to be more properties. And I just want to leave everyone listening with a couple of takeaways about what I'm seeing in the marketplace. Despite what I just said about Brooklyn, Brooklyn is very hot. Everyone wants to be here. Everyone wants to live here. And the question is why? It's because Brooklyn is essentially a suburb of Manhattan. So people get the benefit of city life, but more space, greenery, a backyard, and ideally a better price point. But every day that changes. And something else, the townhouse market is hotter than I've ever seen it. Things fly off the market in one day. So if you're in that marketplace, you got to move fast. And something that I think is really, really interesting is, Midtown, large buildings with amenities, the one bed market is a little bit soft. So if people want to play a contrarian kind of investment, New York's not dead. Every day becomes more open. These offices are going to reopen, and guess where people are going to want to be? In New York City, in a one bed. So call me if you're looking for a one bed in Midtown.
That's great. That's great to know some pockets of stuff out there. Well, guys, thank you so much. Alex Mahgoub and Whit Prouty. Alex in New York, Whit in LA. Awesome tips on how to get out there and do things. Thanks again, everybody. Hold on one second, guys. Let me get off Facebook. Thanks.
Great.